The critically acclaimed The Wretched of the Earth, written and published by iconic scholar Frantz Fanon in 1961. It's a notion that is highly praised by contemporary scholars for its prophetic take on the future of African independence. As a book written at a time before many African nations gained their independence, The Wretched of the Earth is often lauded for its accurate take on such current African issues, such as colonization, neo-colonization, politics, capitalism, corruption, dictatorship, poverty, and of course, independence. The Wretched of the Earth is composed of mainly 5 main chapters that thoroughly explain both the physical and psychological impact of colonization, what colonization means to both the colonizer and the colonized, and the challenges of decolonization. These 5 chapters include concerning violence, spontaneity, its strength and weaknesses, the pitfalls of national consciousness, and the final chapter, colonial war and mental disorders. However, perhaps the most praised section in literal academic circles is this dichotomy of prophecies in the chapter famously known as The Pitfalls of National Consciousness, Chapter 3. This chapter thoroughly foreshadows and explains the root cause of post-independence problems such as poverty, hunger, violence, dictatorship, corruption, and neo-colonization in post-colonial African nations. It gets to the bottom of the background causes of the psychological roots of dictatorship. The book urges that the group of the educated elite he calls the quote-unquote national bourgeoisie is the well-educated black elite that benefits greatly from the colonial system, both before independence and after independence, when they inherit the leadership. The national bourgeoisie are not the same as the black peasant workers who work in the houses, yards, mines, and farms. But the bourgeoisie are the colonized intellectuals that uphold European standards, and that is, in some instances, mentally distanced them from their language, culture, or African upbringing, but still attempt to use this shallow Africanness to appeal to the peasantry masses. So even after colonization, they continue to associate and be influenced by their former colonizers. And as time goes on, they turn out to have very little in common with the native people they rule, and more in common with the former white colonizers. Despite brought up in the same environment of black poverty, racism, and suffering. The Western education they get from an early age from the European missionaries plants a seed that mentally distances them from the rest of the native peasant majority. The national bourgeoisie are brought up as the elite black educated minority in the European ways, hence they gain a subtle lack of empathy for the poor native peasant struggles. Fanon observes that although the vanguard leaders are well off now, the rest of the decolonized nation is not, as he believes that even upon independence, colonization has not passed, but has only changed form. National bourgeoisie, despite their wealth, now still have a great history of severe lack and poverty. This is the very upbringing that causes the national bourgeoisie to loot government funds, because this sense to lack makes it difficult for them to control their greed and capitalist ways, simply because they have never had the money before, unlike the past European colonizers. So when this bourgeoisie ascends to wealth and power after independence, when the country is returned to their hands by its former European colonizers, Fanon writes, as soon as the independence is declared, far from embodying in concrete form the needs of the people in what touches the bread, land, and the restoration of the country to the sacred hands of the people, the leader will reveal his inner purpose to become the general president of that company of profiteers, impatient for their returns, which constitutes the national bourgeoisie. However, in the early days, independents say 5 to 15 years, things may seem as they are running smoothly, but only because this is only the honeymoon period, as the national bourgeoisie are only enjoying the government funds and infrastructural resources of the outgoing colonial European government. So at this time, the misuse of resources, native government is not that clear or apparent, but Fanon follows this as he writes. There exists inside the new regime, however, an inequality in the acquisition of wealth and in monopolization. Some have a double source of income and demonstrate that they are specialized in opportunism. Privileges multiply and corruption triumphs while morality declines. However, once these resources eventually run out after years or decades of independence, Fanon prophesied further that all hell will break loose and poverty in the lives of the black majority will once again run rampant. Not only poverty, but severe capitalism, corruption, political violence, negligence, and pacification will prevail. The formal standards or systems of the European empires will begin to collapse, as Fanon writes. The people stagnate deplorably in the unbearable poverty. Slowly they awaken to the unutterable treason of their leaders. Furthermore, this corruption and bad governance will now become ever so clear to the rest of the public, and the national bourgeoisie can no longer ignore this. The revolutionary ruling party, according to Fanon, will become only a shell of what it used to be, and drift from its core pre-colonial principles that they used to advocate for freedom. So they begin manipulating propaganda to pacify the public by reminding them of the oppression that they went through during the times of European occupation. The former glory of independence in a bid to distract the public from the real elephant in the room, which is the horrible looting and mismanagement of national resources that is really causing this severe poverty in the nation. Fanon argues that political violence between the ruling parties and the opposition parties will take place and increase as the public begin to realize the treacherous lack of progress of the economy. According to Fanon, he writes, the bourgeoisie phase in the history of underdeveloped countries is completely useless phase. When this caste is vanished, devoured by its own contradictions, it will be seen that nothing new has happened since independence was proclaimed and that everything must be started again from scratch. These are the general notions, the pitfalls of national consciousness of Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth.
If you have an African novel you want to see Dudu summarize, do not hesitate to comment below. Don't forget to subscribe for more original, great Afrocentric content like this. Thanks for watching Mimsy Dudu Summaries.